Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Wolf Report on this Monday, new week. We had some storms over the weekend in our area. We hope that it is good where you are. The Wolf Report, again, is a noontime show. Runs about 20 or 25 minutes or so, no more than a half hour. Just a quick news bite in your day with news, sports, maybe some other things, weather sometimes, and good news. Always want to put some good news in there as well. Well, in this edition of the Wolf Report, over the weekend, the president was ready to hit Iran with a massive attack. So today, with all this geopolitical tension, the Arab states, the world economics, oil supplies, energy supplies, according to Newsmax, President Donald Trump says the Gulf allies stepped in to prevent what he described as a massive attack, quote unquote, on Iran. Trump claimed the United States, was positioned for a significant military response during a period of heightened friction, but regional partners urged restraint. To understand the weight of that statement, consider the strategic position of Gulf nations: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. These countries sit directly between Iran and the world's energy supply chain. Any conflict involving Iran threatens not only their borders, but also the global economy. A large-scale strike could trigger retaliation, disrupt shipping lanes, and send the oil prices soaring even higher. President Trump's comments highlight a recurring dynamic. Gulf nations often support U.S. strategic goals, but they also understand that a regional war could unfold right on their doorstep. Their message appears to have been clear: avoid escalation. The story ties directly into broader U.S.-Iran tensions and the delicate balance of power in the region. There is talk of a opening of the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days in a memorandum of understanding. Newsmax also reported that the United States and Iran are close to finalizing a temporary agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days. This narrow waterway, of course, is one of the most important shipping routes on the earth, where roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through it. A 60-day reopening would serve as a cooling off period. In fact, energy prices, oil prices went down on this news. Gives both sides space to negotiate longer term security arrangements, but also ease pressure on global markets, which have been bracing for disruptions. This potential deal signals that despite public tensions, diplomatic channels remain active. Pakistan has been one of those that has been in negotiations with the Iranians. It also reflects the pressure from Gulf nations who rely heavily on this shipping route. Stay tuned. The president says they're not to be trusted. We will see. And again, on that news, the oil prices did drop. And with the news that there will be some stability for hopefully 60 days and beyond, oil prices will drop. That will help at the pump in the coming days. I believe today, put gas in both of my vehicles, and it was over $3.70 a gallon, be much higher than some other places. Israel raises serious concerns over Hamas disarmament deal. Remember, there's a 15-point plan, this Global Board of Peace, that said that Hamas is ready to phase out and turn over weapons. Newsmax is also reporting that Israeli officials have major concerns about a proposed Hamas disarmament agreement. They argue the plan lacks clear enforcement mechanisms, leaving questions about how weapons would be collected, monitored, and prevented from re-entering Gaza. Israel's skepticism is rooted in history. Previous ceasefires and disarmament proposals have often collapsed due to weak oversight or loopholes that allowed militant groups to rearm. Without strong guarantees, Israeli leaders feel the deal could weaken security rather than strengthen it. There's a lot of distrust in this region. It remains to be seen. So we have two agreements, both of them based on hope. But we will see. Can the agreement between the United States and Iran go past the 60-day mark? And can progress be made in the disarmament of Hamas? It seems too good to be true, but the world can hope. Certainly the people that are caught in the middle. Senator Kennedy opposes the January 6 payouts from the weaponization fund. Senator John Kennedy is opposing a proposal to use the weaponization subcommittee fund. Remember, it's about $10 billion. I believe that 10 million or maybe it's 10 million, that will provide payouts to individuals charged or convicted in connection with the January 6th. Kendi argues that the fund was created to investigate alleged government overreach, not to compensate defendants. He says using this fund this way would be inappropriate and outside its intended scope. The debate reflects ongoing political tension surrounding January 6th, government accountability, and the role of congressional oversight. One senator said we should not be rewarding punks. We will see. This fund has become very much the center of disagreement between even among Republicans. Moving on in some other news, commentator Michael Savage, I used to listen to Savage a lot, he's calling for activists in New York Mayor Mamdani to be deported under a 1954 anti-communism law. Let's be clear, these laws were written for the height of the Cold War. The U.S. government was aggressively targeting communist organizations. Today, they're largely considered obsolete. Any attempt to use them would face major constitutional challenges. This is one of those stories that shows how political rhetoric can reach back decades to pull old laws into modern debates. In fact, the president has done that with some old laws on the books. Whether you agree or disagree with Mamdani's politics, the idea of using a 70-year-old statute to deport a sitting state senator is, well, probably a stretch. It's a reminder that political commentary today often leans on dramatic language to make a point, even when the legal reality doesn't match the headline. Both sides do this with great effectiveness to stir up their base. The unfortunate shooting of the weekend at the restaurant in Idaho was very sad, although there was some positives that came out of it. There were 4 dead, including the suspect, who turned the weapon on himself. But we've seen there was a citizen who stepped in, who kept the shooter pinned down until he took his life. And that protected others from being injured or killed. So they're trying to determine what that motive was and whether the suspect had any connection to the victims. It's one of those stories that's so sudden, it's senseless. It hits us in our everyday life. A lot of us have went through drive-thrus at fast food restaurants. Can imagine someone getting a weapon out of their vehicle and starting to shoot. One of those cars was a Tesla that was being charged. The husband was slain. The wife was injured, but is to survive. And the tragedy of her life now without her husband. You know, people go out to have a good time. They don't deserve to have these things happen. We must be ready and willing with, yes, a strong police presence, but also citizens that are ready to stand up and help. Others have to remove injured ones from the field of battle. In sports, the Yankees have acquired Luis Garcia from the Nationals. The Braves just swept the Nationals. They're on about a 7 or 8 game lead right now. The Phillies won as well today. But the trade deadline is tomorrow. ESPN reported that the Yankees have acquired infielder Luis Garcia from the Washington Nationals. Garcia brings contact hitting, defensive flexibility, and a chance for the Yankees to strengthen their infield depth. It's been a struggle for the Yankees of late. They are now in second place after having given up the lead after a run of bad games with very little offense. It's not a blockbuster move, but it is a good move and a smart move. Garcia's young. He's got upside, and the Yankees are trying to tighten up the roster. If he can find his rhythm in the second half, he could be one of those players who quietly becomes a difference maker. And if not, it's still a low-risk move for a team that's always looking for the extra park and they gave away some pitching for that move. Turning to football, the New Orleans Saints placed wide receiver Jalen Polk on the reserve retired list. Shockingly, at just 24 years old, he has decided to retire at this point. It's very unusual at this age. Kind of raises some eyebrows. He's very young, very talented. It's very early in his career. And so when a player steps down, you wonder if there's some injury going on, personal reasons, or just a change in life that they're looking for something different. Whatever the reason, we would hope that it is the best for this young man, for his long-term health and future. The Saints will look to fill that roster spot, and we will just have to sit back and watch and see if this young man does decide to return from the game or to the game or stay away. In some good news, I'd like to give you some good news. a touring rock band, found themselves stranded when their vehicle broke down until a complete stranger stepped in offering his personal truck so they could finish their shows. He drove 500 miles to deliver it, then 500 miles back home. What a great story. You see a band in need. They don't have much money. They're relying on money from shows to keep going. These things happen. Sometimes there's thefts that happens as well. Sometimes those things can happen. Guitars get stolen, band equipment worth a lot of money, even for a band, because they've poured everything they have into it. And we see a nice gentleman step forward and decide to give this band some help. That is wonderful. I hope that in the end, maybe they write a song about him and let him know just how much that they appreciate what he's done. So I'm sure they're very appreciative. Maybe that'd be nice if he had a song that was written about him. Generosity. He just says, let the games go on, let the show go on, as we say. So we will see. In some other news, circling back to some of the Iran news, the president, according to New York Post, says that he was contacted by Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman Ali Saud. He spoke privately with the president on Saturday. Quote by the president, "I was asked by Saudi Arabia, by UAE, by Qatar, and by Iran," he told reporters on board Air Force One when asked why he scrapped the plan to strike Iran. They said they would prefer a deal as opposed to an attack because you don't know where these attacks lead. But the Saudi Crown Prince reassured him that Iran was ready to make a deal. They thought that the deal is imminent, Trump said, noting that it would include the Strait of Hormuz and on Iran's nuclear program. The administration has been clear he wants the Strait, a critical waterway for global trade and oil shipments, open and free of tolls. They also want Tehran not to be able to access nuclear weapons. A lot of times they'll say to me, and then they go out and say, we don't know what he's talking about. He wouldn't give a deadline for reaching an agreement, but assured that the U.S. military is ready to strike at any time. We're ready to go anytime we want. On Saturday night, he called those strikes off, leading hopefully to an agreement that will occur so that our men and women don't be in the middle of a wider regional battle and war, and maybe even, who knows, ground troops. We never know. A lot of news in Spain and Italy, as there's been so many things taken over, as some migrants have, rushed some cities. This open door border policy has not worked well for them. Italy has temporarily suspended its travel pact with Spain after 60,000 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa suddenly poured into the Spanish city of Ceuta last week, rattling European Union leaders. Italy's dramatic move, announced by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, is meant to prevent migrants from entering her country if they flooded in the Spanish territory following socialist leader Pedro Sanchez's immigration-friendly policies. She said Italy is taking an extraordinary measure adopted to safeguard national security and prevent possible repercussions to our nation. Meloni is suspending her country's part of the Schengen agreement, which allows free-flowing travel between 29 European Union countries, with Spain for 1 month. Ceuta, a Spanish city of about 83,000 people surrounded by Morocco on the Mediterranean coast, is one of only 2 land borders between the EU and Africa. Images of tens of thousands of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa trying to breach fences and swim across jetties to get into Spain's city of Ceuta have raised fear in Europe of a new immigration crisis. In response, Spain installed a 1,600-foot floating barrier to make it harder to get around the border. Officials also said that most of the migrants who made it across were expelled back to Morocco. Italy went the farthest in its response, but the leaders of Finland and Denmark also criticized Spain for failing to protect its borders. And France stepped up its border checks at Spanish crossings. The interior ministers of 22 European countries are slated to hold an emergency meeting Tuesday to discuss border security. Go figure. All the criticism of the United States and border security, and look what happens. Sanchez hit back at the criticism and implied that it was a manufactured crisis. Quote, in the current international context, the European Union cannot afford this kind of selfish, polarizing, and unlawful action, he said. One political ally in Spain went so far as to suggest Israel and the Trump administration were to blame for the coup breach as punishment for Sanchez's strong stance on Gaza and refusal to allow the U.S. to use Spanish air bases for planes headed to the Middle East for the Iran war. I think that would be, as we said earlier, a bit of a stretch. Whatever makes you feel good. You've got a problem. You better deal with it in a big way. Some of the trades that have occurred as well, we didn't get to all of them in baseball. I want to come back to that too. Freddie Peralta was traded to the Rays. The Mets have been in a free fall. This roster is going to have to be redone. So his time with the Mets is officially over. There were some other moves that were made last week, such as A.J. Minter, departure to the Minnesota Twins. On Sunday, the Mets traded Peralta to the Rays for 3 minor league prospects. The Mets acquired Aiden Smith, an infielder rated as the Rays' number 15 prospect, according to the MLB pipeline. The Mets also acquired right-handed pitcher Gary Gil Hill, number 26, an infielder, and Malian Petrie, number 27. Peralta's remaining salary of about $2.5 million will be covered by the Rays, who are battling for the AL East title. The move occurred a day after the top starting pitcher on the trade market, Tariq Skubal, was dealt to the Dodgers. By the way, the Dodgers still continue to have the best record in baseball over this time, and the Braves have number 2. The Braves have won many games in a row. In 22 starts, Peralta pitched a 4.99 ERA with the Mets, failing to solidify the top of the rotation as the team's brass had envisioned when the right-hander was acquired last season, along with Tobias Myers for prospects Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. He came here to anchor a rotation and felt the weight of that. Interim manager Andy Green said, following the Mets' 2-0 loss to the Marlins at Citi Field. I know from talking to him, he certainly doesn't feel like it went the way that he'd hoped it would. And I think we all feel the same way. Well, none of it has went the way that they had hoped it would go. In addition, the Chicago White Sox acquired Luis Castillo from the Mariners in a pretty big trade ahead of the deadline. The White Sox, one season removed from a 102-loss campaign and currently leading the American League Central, made a splash ahead of the trade deadline. Acquired 2-time All-Star Luis Castillo from the Mariners in exchange for reliever Seranthony Dominguez, outfitter Nolan Jones, and prospect Boston Smith. New York Post Joel Sherman and John Heyman confirmed Saturday. Castillo, who finished 5th in the voting for the Cy Young Award in 2023, has struggled to start the 2026 season, collecting a 5.06 ERA and pitching to a 3-9 record across 20 starts. But the potential is there, and he'll add to a Chicago pitching staff that sits with the number 16 rotation in Major League Baseball for ERA at 4.29, according to Fangraphs. The White Sox will also take on the remaining money for Castillo's contract, according to ESPN, is set to make $22.75 million next season, with a vesting option for 28 if he throws 180 innings in 2027. Dominguez appeared in 43 games this season, collecting a 3.99 ERA, and will join a Mariners team that sits 4 games under 500, but just 2.5 games, back in the AL East. Baseball playoffs are in view. Teams are lining up to get ready to try to get one of those spots or hold on to it as they are seeing those things move very quickly. Maybe another deal. Let's see here. Let's give a little funny story. Benches were cleared during the Guardians Diamondbacks rain delay and bizarre scene after perfect game drama. What began as an outstanding pitching performance by Gavin Williams quickly turned into one of the most unusual scenes of the season. A benches clearing confrontation between the Guardians and the Diamondbacks erupted in the middle of a rain delay Sunday afternoon at Progressive Field. The tension started at the top of the 6th as Williams was in the midst of tossing a perfect game. Number 27-year-old had retired each of his first 15 hitters, while striking out 10. Leading off the inning, controversy ensued when Diamondback center fielder Tim Tawa attempted to bunt on an 0-1 pitch. The attempt went foul, drawing an immediate reaction from Guardians catcher Patrick Bailey, who exchanged words with Tawa behind home plate. On the next pitch, Tavell lined a single into right field, ending Williams' perfect game bid. A wild pitch followed soon after, and as the rain intensified to the point of forcing a rain delay, the two benches cleared as the grounds crew looked to pull the tarp onto the field. Before the tarp could be fully covered the infield, Guardians manager Stephen Vogt stormed out of the dugout towards the Diamondbacks, prompting both benches and bullpens to empty. Players and coaches gathered in their home plate, but the grounds crew awkwardly moved the tarp around the growing scrum. Heated words were exchanged, but ultimately no punches were thrown. This stems from another one of baseball's apparent quote-unquote unwritten rules, where some players believe bunting against a pitcher is throwing a no-hitter or perfect game is poor sportsmanship. Others might argue that every hitter has the right to hit however they please and attempt to reach base, particularly a regular season game that matters for everyone involved. On July 9th, in a game between the Guardians and Minnesota Twins, Royce Lewis also showed bunt before eventually collecting the hit that spoiled another perfect game attempt, also against Williams. Oh, those pesky unwritten rules that they have in baseball. Well, that's our show for today. We'll see you again tomorrow on the Wolf Report here at the Wolf Nation Network, brought to you by Wolf Nation Coffee. Man, we have loaded up the studio with the pods, with the ground coffee. We've just been doing a lot of improvements, and we love our Wolf Nation coffee. And we have a lot of different blends, from the breakfast blend to the house blend to the 6-bean, and those pods, which are just wonderful. Quick one-cupper. You can get those at our Shopify. The QR code is on the screen. All you got to do is scan that. Shipping is included in all prices. We'll see you next time on the Wolf Report. Thank you for support of our show and our channels. We appreciate you, and may God bless you. And may you know Jesus Christ today is your Lord and Savior. If not, make that decision today. Your life does depend on it. Eternal life, that is. Amen. Take care and God bless.